Ooh, let's see. Oh, there we go. I see you.
Okay, we're live, Lauren.
Okay, thanks, Rick. I'm gonna call to order tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee. It's Wednesday, June 1st, 2020. Time is 5:19. I am going to do roll call as first agenda item here, and I'm just gonna do it for everybody and run down the list of people at today's meeting. I am Lauren McNally, 5th Ward City Council person and chairwoman. We have Rick Deek, Anita Davis, 6th Ward City Council, Valencia Morrow, Basha Adamczak, 7th Ward City Council, Chief Barry Finley, Chuck Shasho, Jennifer Ozinger, Julius Oliver, 1st Ward City Council, Kevin Flynn, Mike Durkin, Mike Gray, 6th Ward City Council, or 4th Ward City Council, sorry, Mike. Nikki Posterly, Samantha Turner, 3rd Ward City Council, Tara Chofie, Jean Leeson, Dawn Turnage.
Hello.
Hello, I think that is everyone today on here that I see. So we will
Mayor
get started.
Brown's on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Brown, you are on here under your phone number. So,
Yes.
Okay. All right, we will get started under our ordinances here. Under ordinance number 1, this is for our salt control or salt purchase, sorry. Does anyone have questions for Chuck? Or Chuck, did you want to say something? I saw your hand up there.
I'll just say that this is going to, through the chair, through this piece of legislation will allow us to purchase not only through a cooperative purchase through the Ohio Department of Transportation, but also enter into a memorandum of understanding with Mahoning County. This is identical to the way we purchased sodium chloride last year. We did buy them from 2 separate sources.
Are there any questions for Chuck? I'll take hand raises. Let's see, Anita.
Yeah, through the chair, Chuck, is this going to be for 1 year or for 2 years?
Through the chair, this is for 1 year. They bid this annually, so this is for 1 year. So this would be for the end of 2020 into 21. This will take us all the way to the spring of 2021.
Through the chair, follow up, and that's the same amount we paid last year?
Through the chair, no. I don't know the ODOT amount yet. And Mahoning County did bid theirs already. I'll get that. I can get that amount for you, but I don't anticipate a major increase in the salt this year.
Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, I was just asking, was this the same amount that we paid last year?
Chuck, do you remember?
Through the chair, we don't know the amounts yet. This is we have to commit to ODOT to purchase that before they go out for bid. So we won't know the amount until they bid it, just like when we bid our projects.
So we don't.
Quantity wise, it's going to be about the same amount, but dollar wise, we won't know till the bids come in.
But Chuck, you do know how much we paid last year.
Through the chair, I don't have the number with me, but it's generally, I think we were around 700,000. I don't know if Kevin would be able to elaborate on that or not.
Kevin, do you remember what you spent last year in your budget on it?
I do not remember the dollar amount. I can tell you the volume. We used roughly 3,500 ton, down from about 13,000 ton the year before. And currently our salt dome fits almost close to 7,000 ton and it is currently full. But I can't speak on the dollar amount, I'm sorry.
Okay. Anita, maybe we can wait
Yeah.
for Kyle. I don't see him on here yet. Samantha, you had your hand up.
Actually, Kevin answered those questions, the questions that I had. Thank you.
Okay. Mike.
Yeah, regardless, if we
approve it, I mean, we're agreeing to, we don't have to, if we disagreed with the price, Chuck, we wouldn't have to commit to purchasing it, right? If something was terribly wrong, we're not committed to purchase a quantity under this agreement, are we?
Chuck,
Through the chair, yes, we are.
Okay.
Salt's a different animal. We generally want to purchase about, I want to say it's about 12,000 tons of salt per year. That's what we want to have. We have a 10% plus or minus leeway with ODOT. I mean, we're gonna need salt. We did purchase our minimum last year, so we probably won't need the 12,000 tons this year, but we'll have to purchase the minimum, which would be 10% less than this. I think the 6,000 I put for ODOT. So, I mean, we don't really have an option to not purchase salt. I don't know why we wouldn't purchase salt, but it's the price is. This process is something we've been doing very successfully for the last 3 to 4 years.
Basha, I saw your hand up.
The questions that I had, Kevin already answered regarding the quantity that we have.
Okay. Any more discussion on the salt for right now? Okay, we will move on to item number 2, the Mill Creek Metropark Connector Project. Chuck, can you speak on behalf of this project?
Through the chair, yes. This is a project that we got from the Clean Ohio Trails program. It's a funding source that we never got before. It's a grant that we never did get before. We did quite a bit of effort in getting this grant. The design is complete. It's now time to go out for bids. Not much has really changed on the project. The big change would be that we're going to be putting the bike trail on Mahoning Avenue within the curb area, just inside the curb area, instead of expanding it out and acquiring right away.
Any questions, Anita?
Yes, through the chair. So Chuck, we already went out for $250,000. So is this $770,000 additional, or is that $250 included?
Through the chair, this is the final construction estimate throughout for bids. So this is the total construction contract is estimated to be at about $770,000. We haven't, any other expenditures we had made under this grant would have been for design services.
How much of this is the $770,000 that's coming out of our budget? That's not part of the grant. The grant is on top of that for the total amount of the project.
I'm sorry, through the chair, I misunderstood the question.
Sorry.
The total cost of the project is $770,000. The grant amount is 75% of that. So the
Okay.
remaining 25% would be our local commitment, which is included in the 2020 budget.
Anita, did that clear that up for you?
Yeah, but what is that when you say our share is 25%? What is that going to be dollar wise? Is that
Through the chair, it's going to be about just under $200,000.
okay? Thank you.
Any other questions about this piece? Okay, just for the record, I see Kyle has joined the meeting now. I think that's it. I don't think I see anybody else who I didn't catch. Okay, we'll move on to number 3. This is the Mahoning Crescent Street project. Any questions for Chuck? No questions for Chuck. Okay, move on to number 4. Questions on the Mahoning Youngstown build piece here? Nope. Okay. Number 5 is off the agenda for today. Number 6, was the emergency sewer repairs. Question for Chuck. Samantha?
Chuck, I know you made mention to there being a maintenance schedule. Could you talk a little about that maintenance schedule? And then also, when was the last time this Student Circle sewer?
I'm sorry, Samantha, I didn't catch the second half of your question there.
When was the last time the Susan Circle sewer was inspected?
Through the chair, we do have a regular maintenance schedule for our sanitary sewers. I can't tell you when the last time the Susan Circle sewer was maintained or was inspected. I wasn't prepared to answer that, but I can get that information for you.
Anything else on this one? Okay. Number 7, this is part of our wastewater treatment plant as well. Any questions for Chuck? Anita?
Yeah, just a question, Chuck, this was a budgeted expenditure, correct?
I'm gonna, before you answer, Chuck, I think, Harry, can you mute yourself? I can't mute you. Thank you. Go ahead, Chuck.
Through the chair, Councilwoman, I believe your question was this a budgeted expenditure? Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
So, no, it was not. This is an emergency repair to a bar screen that was at some point planned to be replaced with phase 2 of the long-term control plan as we began construction on the high rate treatment facility. We simply just can't wait that long. The bar screen has failed, and it is causing an excessive amount of debris to enter the primary clarifiers, which is causing some damage to the newly installed equipment. We simply have to get this repaired.
So this was an emergency in effect.
Through the chair, this is definitely an emergency.
Okay. And Chuck, on that last question, when you said you weren't prepared, you didn't have that information about the schedule. Could you have that and get an email to us before Wednesday's meeting about the inspections for Susan Circle?
Through the chair, absolutely.
Thank you.
Would it be helpful or advantageous, Chuck, if we had some type of public works perhaps meeting where you can show us your maintenance schedule? Or is that more of something that would be a one-off conversation, not really a presentation?
Through the chair, I'll be more than happy to, if you would like to schedule a public utilities meeting, perhaps.
Okay, we could talk about that if people have some questions on it. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to number 8 unless anything else there. Okay. Number 8, questions here, more on the wastewater treatment plant.
I'm gonna leave myself unmuted. Through the chair.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Yes, this is our annual bidding of polymer. We use polymers to deal with the sludge in the wastewater treatment plant for the specific purpose of changing viscosity for dewatering.
I don't see any questions, so I will move on to number 9. More on the wastewater treatment plant.
Through the chair,
Yes,
sorry. This is for for bidding for, just as it says, outside lab services. With Tom Moranti not there anymore, obviously, we are needing a significant amount of laboratory services for testing to make sure we're meeting our permit limits. Tommy was a chemist, as we all know. He took a pretty active role in the laboratory at the plant. So without him there, it's increasingly difficult to achieve those same results. So we're going to request that we go out for outside lab testing. We always have went out for lab testing, but we anticipate that this is going to exceed $25,000.
Was that lab testing knowledge part of his licensure that he had, or was that outside the norm for that?
Through the chair, that was definitely outside the norm. It's not something, I mean, obviously someone with a class 4 license would have some chemistry knowledge, but Tom Morani was different. Tommy was, he had a significant amount of knowledge in a wide array of things, and chemistry was one of them. He had a master's degree in chemistry, and he wrote quite a bit of technical papers, and he was very well versed in it.
Okay. Mike, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, at some point, is it, would we need to have a chemist in-house, or does it make sense? Because some of these costs, I'm sure there are costs of running the lab. It wouldn't just be salaries, because the chemicals and equipment and things like that, it's probably a balance between the two. Would that be right, Chuck?
Through the chair, yes. I think that, at some point, I think we may want to get back into the laboratory business. In fact, one of the later pieces of legislation, I believe, that are on here is going to kind of lead into that. But for right now, we do need to get to making sure our testing continues.
Thank you for that clarification.
Anyone else have questions here? Okay, thanks, Chuck. Move on to number 10. This is also wastewater treatment plant.
Through
Go
the
ahead,
chair.
Chuck.
Yes, through the chair. This piece of legislation is for a pretty significant project at the wastewater treatment plant. A few years ago, we were hit with a fine for our air quality at our incinerators. As you know, we do have an incinerators, two incinerators at the wastewater treatment plant to incinerate the sludge, the cake as we call it. So when we were found in non-compliance, it was found that the cost was going to be extensive, and we didn't have the time to get this repaired, which involves air scrubbers and so forth, and quite a bit of rehabilitation on the incinerators. So what we did was we developed a plan and got approval from the EPA to landfill our sludge. So basically what we were doing is we bid out, and we were landfilling the sludge operations, taking it to a landfill. Well, it's not the most cost-effective approach. We are spending close to almost $1 million in landfilling fees a year. Not all on the sludge. There's other landfilling operations that we still have to do, like grit and just everyday trash and catch basin and cleanings and so forth. But the vast majority of that is the sludge. There's a lot of weight to it, even though we do press it. And beyond that, we are approaching the end of our contract with our contractor, and there's been some evidence that I think that not only is the price going to go up if we rebid it, they're getting to a point where they may not actually be able to take the material anymore. And if we have to search for other location to landfill the sludge, the costs are really going to go up. So it is imperative. The project itself is probably going to be about a $5 million project to improve the incinerators, but not doing it really isn't an option at this point.
And it's outside the scope of it's outside the scope of our long-term control plan, right? This is its own project.
Through the chair, unfortunately, yes, it is. It is not in the scope of our long-term control plan. I mean, it's in the EPA's interest, a different division of the EPA, a different section, the air section, but it is in the interest of the EPA that we do get this corrected.
Any questions?
Which isn't an option.
Does anyone have questions here? Comments? Okay, I don't see any hands, so I'm gonna move on. Thanks, Chuck. Number 11. This is, it looks like it's more, this is more lab testing. Chuck.
Through the chair, yes. This is our lab testing this is the amount of lab testing that we anticipate having to use before we go out for bid. So the lab costs are extensive, which is why we're going to be looking at maybe possibly bringing this back in house with Tommy not here anymore. But we do have some work that needs to be performed right away before we even go out for bid. So it's going to take probably a month or two to get these proposals all squared away, and we do need to get some of this lab service completed, some of which we have already expended through the year, under 25,000.
Is this the process you guys, or is this the company and process you guys have been using since Tommy? Well,
through the chair, yes, that is the Cardinal Labs is the lab that we've been using. The amounts that we're using is not, is obviously more now with Tommy gone, but we've always used them even when Tommy was here for some things.
Mike.
That is Cardinal, that's located in the city on Salt Springs Road, correct?
Through the chair, but yes, I believe so. It's local.
Thank you.
Samantha.
Chuck, I would be interested to find out how much we were saving with someone at Tommy's education level, and if we should look into a class 4 that has a background, and what that investment into someone with the proper skill set would save the city overall. You mentioning that these tests, we didn't have to do as much of this because we had some with such a high skill set, and finding someone, possibly having to pay them a higher wage, it seems like it would have saved us this year, saved us quite a bit. So I would like to know if you could help us find out how much we were actually saving by not having to spend so much on outsourcing the work. If you could pull that information together for Wednesday.
Through the chair, I will try my best to get that together for Wednesday. It's not so much, yes, Tom was a different individual. He wasn't a person you normally find in this type of position, but it's beyond that. There's also laboratory personnel that we would be missing that we would have to find as well. But I will do my best to get that for Wednesday.
Mike.
Yeah, just from my experience in the private sector too, I don't know what kind of, sometimes there's costs to maintain lab certifications for that. I'm not sure if that's a cost component, because if we have to be some kind of certified lab or meet some quality assurance program, there's an additional burden of that compliance, which sometimes may be saved by outsourcing the total testing. So that could be a component in the cost.
Samantha.
I mean, I definitely understand the certification, but Chuck, you said that Tommy did a partial amount of this work. We didn't have to outsource as much of this work because of Tommy's expertise. So I would just like to know what that looked like and what that saved us. So I think that I know right now we don't have a class 4. I know the guy that's working in his stead is working on his class 4, but Tommy had a class 4 and he also had a master's in chemistry. So maybe that's on our job description when we're looking for someone to take on this very important position for the city.
Maybe it could be just, part of an analysis of a bigger conversation at a public works meeting, Chuck, where you can maybe even share some of your ideas about bringing it in-house and what something like that would look like versus historically what we've spent outsourcing. All right. Anything else here? Chuck? Go ahead, Chuck, did you have a comment? Sorry.
No, it's certainly something we can do within our public utilities meeting.
Okay. All right, well, we will move on to, let's see, what was that, number 11? So number 12 is the court view access for their programming. I think Kyle probably will have to answer questions on this one, if we have any. Nothing? Okay. Number 13 is also in the court's computerization fund. Questions on this? Nothing. All right. Number 14 is Chuck again, wastewater treatment plant. Any questions for Chuck on this particular item?
Excuse me, sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead, Chuck.
Through the chair. This is legislation for appropriation of funds within the wastewater treatment plant. The pretreatment fund is a separate fund in the wastewater treatment plant that we need to appropriate into this specific purpose so that we can utilize it for pretreatment operations, some of which include laboratory equipment and supplies.
All right, I don't see anything here, so I'm going to move on. Oh, go ahead, Samantha.
Chuck, can you give us an example of what professional service fees look like?
Through the chair, what they look like?
Yeah.
What they are?
Yeah.
A professional service would be like engineering, laboratory service, anything that comes with a special type of certification, architectural services, stuff like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 15 is the Parks grant. Dawn, do you want to tell us a little bit about how this one came to be and what you plan on using it for?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, this one came to be the Ohio Parks and Rec had sent out to all the parks opportunity to apply for a grant in reference to bringing individuals back to the parks once we are able to, when either COVID is over or something is in place for that to happen. So what I did was presented to them a program to whereas we can still use our parks without using the same space, which is if anyone has heard, it has already started with Healthy Community Partnership, the Share Your Smile, Not Your Space campaign. And with the incentive of getting individuals to utilize our parks or even places throughout the city of Youngstown to submit pictures or activities or individual or family things or with their kids, whatever they're doing. So when we kick that off in June, there also will be incentives for them to earn free membership at the recreation center, golf at the golf course too, once we are able to open, or even at the pool. So this will also offset that cost through the grant purpose of us doing the advertisement for that as well as the prizes. So we were one of 21 throughout the Northeast Ohio to receive that.
So, okay, so we'll be using the money to advertise this program that you came up with and then offset the cost of the membership giveaways.
Right. The membership giveaways and other giveaways that we'll be giving to, such as the pool and golfing as well.
Okay. And when does it kick off?
We would like to kick this off the third week of June.
Do you have questions here from anyone? Anita?
Just a quick question. So I can understand the advertising part. What are the kind of prizes that you're going to be giving out for up to $1,000 for pictures?
No, that will come with giveaways we can spend that money on to give as prizes. Our memberships at the recreation center for an entire year, we were going to give 4 of those away, in which the cost of that would be $80 per membership, as well as golf memberships also. I'm sorry, opportunity to golf for so many rounds, up to $100 for that as well. And then we also wanted to include our local, we are allowed to purchase to our local grocery stores. So the prizes can be up to it locally. We would like to keep it locally up to that amount, whichever left over after our advertising.
To the chair, so you're expecting the golf course to open up at some point?
At some point, I hope that is a goal, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else here? Okay, I will move on. Let's see, number 16. These are changes to the water department. Questions? I have some questions, I guess, about this one. This is a management position. So, correct, that's what I think I read on the document. So I was just curious as to why you were putting steps in here, and what those, like, are they tied to something like certifications, or, you know, if they're not, typically steps have some language around them in union contracts, but I was wondering what the, you know, regulations were around these steps. Harry, or I don't know if anyone from the law department's on.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. You asked about, are there any regulations? No, that's the way most of the, all of the, with the exception of the water commissioner's position, they all have steps, just based on experience. And it typically goes from 1 to 3 years. I'm 1 to 5 years. So I mean, that's in.
Okay, the steps weren't listed in the original one. They were only listed in the revision that was being asked to be revised. So that's where my confusion lies, I guess.
Yeah, if you look at the master salary ordinance, there's steps. So
it's not a change from.
No.
So then there's no change in the salary or the steps. They're staying the same. The only change is actually the title of the position.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. Yep.
Anyone else have questions on this one? Anita?
Any additional duties for this position?
You broke up, Anita. You said something position.
Well, yeah. Other than it's just going to be that every year they get a pay increase. There's no additional duties to go along with the pay increase.
There's no pay increase.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the confusion is just the way that they presented it to us, perhaps. They didn't fully include all the details in the original explanation of the job position. They only included them in the new one, so it looked like you were adding something new.
Oh, okay. No, it's just that we wanted to update. We are going to update the job description because it's from 1980 something. I think when the job was created. So it was just pretty much modernizing the job itself by changing the name, and then we'll be changing some of the job description duties to match, you know, actually what the job is performing. But that's something that would go through the Civil Service Commission. So that's pretty much all that's happened with that.
Okay. I don't see anyone else's hands. So I will move on then. Number 17 is revising the codified ordinances. This was specific to our sewer rates. It looked like was being changed. So I was just looking for some clarification. I don't know if anyone else had questions there. I would assume maybe the law department needed to talk about that. Is that being changed to reflect the recent rate increases, or is this something else?
Those are the questions I had as well, Lauren.
Okay, Samantha, thanks. I don't know if anyone's from the law department on. There's a couple of phone numbers on here.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I'm here.
Okay, hi Jeff, thanks.
Hi, sure. Well, the law department just deals with that with regard to form and not substance, so I could not answer the substance component. That would be a matter, I think, for Chuck, I believe, and or the mayor. Nikki, can you jump in?
Nikki, do you know? You're on mute if you're speaking. If not, I will move to Chuck
Sorry.
to give him. Okay, go ahead, Nikki.
I have no idea what this is even about. So no, I don't have anything to add to this.
Okay. Chuck, would you happen to know?
Through the chair, I don't know of anything that we've done any structural changes in the sewer ordinances other than the rates, but unless this is a
Well, do we know who proposed this piece of legislation then?
sorry.
Sorry, Chuck, who asked for this piece of legislation? Had to come from somewhere. Mayor?
This is Jeff again. Is this the section, and I don't have it in front of me, is this the section that has to do with just sort of repaginating and changing the actual structure of the statute so that they're more easy to understand? I didn't think this was a substantive change. I thought it was just a procedural page change.
If that's the case, then that clarifies things for me, but I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Through the chair.
Mayor.
If I could, if since we don't have a good clarification on this, and I'm without my agenda in front of me, I'm down at the B&O, so we can put it, if you want to keep it off agenda, or if you want to wait until before now and in the meeting on Wednesday, if you get satisfaction, you can put it on for passage. But if not, we can get more clarification on it. I believe it's typically how we do the codified order, change it. So, but I don't have my agenda in front of me, so I can't really dive into it or have the full ordinance that was asked for.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if someone can provide that information by Wednesday, happy to leave it on for discussion then. No reason to hold it up if I can get the answers.
All right.
Through the chair, this is Jeff.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. My appreciation is it's just a routine changing of the pagination and one of those annual or biannual attempts to make the ordinance read better. And it wasn't a substantive change, but I will verify that. I think you threw me because I didn't have any appreciation that there were any actual number changes to any of the rates, but I will verify that for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Anything else on this last piece? Nope. Okay. That is everything under our pending legislation here. So item number 3 under miscellaneous, Kyle had asked for the floor for a couple minutes. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you, everyone. Do all of you council members have the 3 items that are handouts, one being a summary page with some graphs, and the other 2 handouts, one being the 2019 firefighter overtime through May and the 2020 firefighter overtime through May? Do you have those in front of you?
Those were emailed to us this afternoon, Kyle.
Okay, fantastic. So all council members have that, because that's how I'm going to address you, by discussing that. I just wanted to make sure all of you had it. Okay.
Yes, everyone should.
Okay. Chief Finley is probably also going to potentially participate if there is any questions. So I know that him and I sat down and put this together so that we could make this presentation to you. So when there are questions, it can be either directed to myself or to Chief Finley.
Hey, Kyle, I think you can just tell us what it is, and we can make a plan for another meeting to have a full discussion on it, if that's what we want to do.
Well, we can definitely do that. I mean, the administration is going to be moving forward to address this, but if you'd like that, we can have another meeting to tell you why we have made those decisions. But I just want to bring up to speed on what is the data that we are going to discuss, and what, as a result of the data, the administration is going to do going forward. What you have in front of you is analysis of year-to-date comparison of this year and last year. First, the call-offs by our firefighters. We have 3 turns at the fire station, A, B, and C. And as you can see, there has been a year-over-year 5 months change of 78%, meaning that our firefighters have, since the start of the new year, a total call-offs over those 3 shifts are 303 compared to 170 last year. As a result of those call-offs, you can see down below that the number of overtime that has been incurred by the fire department has, in essence, skyrocketed in 5 months. Last year through the month of May, the city had, this is for non-holiday overtime, the city had expended roughly $10,000 in overtime for the first 5 months. Through the first 5 months of this calendar year, we have expended $116,000 in firefighter overtime. That is growth of nearly 1,100% over the same time period last year. What is even a little more alarming is when you look at February, if you notice up above, the call-offs were almost identical. But when you look below and you can look at comparison of how much it has cost, if you go back and look in the details, you are going to be seeing that instead of having just firefighters who are calling off, we have the more senior firefighters who are our captains, our lieutenants, and even our battalion chiefs who are choosing for unforeseen reasons to call the department during their scheduled day to work and are calling off. I want to highlight that, remember, a firefighter works once every 3 days. So over the course of a month, a firefighter is scheduled to work 10 days over 30 days. So when they are calling off, they're calling off from anywhere from an hour up to 24 hours. And it's something also to point out is when a firefighter calls off and a firefighter has to be replaced for overtime, his overtime rate is actually calculated differently. All firefighters are paid based on a 51-hour work week. But when they work overtime, their time and a half hour is calculated by dividing their total wage by 40 hours. So their actual wage is actually greater than what normally would be paid for a firefighter working his 24-hour shift. On top of that, we had firefighters impacted by COVID-19. We had roughly 5 firefighters that were impacted for almost 28 days. Those 5 firefighters, as a result of them being off, we generated roughly $25,000 in overtime as a result of that. So yes, that it has had an impact, but as you can see, we've already spent $116,000 through the month of May. And when you take into consideration January, February, March, and May, yes, it is a much larger chunk than that one activity of those firefighters being off as a result of the illness that they ended up catching as a result of the virus. On top of that, during the budget year, when we sat down, you remember we initially were going to start with a $60,000 budget. And you as a group felt that that was not going to be adequate enough. And the chief spoke up during one of those meetings and you guys awarded him an additional $50K, taking that budget up for the whole year to $110,000 for non-holiday overtime. As you can see, we've already surpassed that. We are at $116,000, and that was through May 22nd. This past weekend, we had a number of firefighters call off. So that overtime is already escalating and beyond that total. So we are actually adding to it every day as we proceed. It's also important to point out that when you look at that year over year, last year, we ended the whole calendar year with 116,000 in total non-holiday overtime. We have already spent that through the month of May this year. Last year, we spent 22,000 through July. Then from August forward, the firefighters decided to start utilizing call-offs as a way of, I guess, extending their non-working day. And we ended up incurring between August 1st and December 31st, $93,000 in overtime. That has unfortunately not stopped. And that's why when you see this year-over-year comparison, you can see that most of the overtime was earned in the last quarter of 2019. We have now used up our entire budget. And given all of the circumstances that we're going to be addressing going forward with income tax shortfall, with other revenue declines, we believe in the administration that we are going to begin browning out fire stations as a way of dealing with living within the means of the budget. Right now, there is not available money to move from any other area into this because we already are beginning to make cuts in other line items of other people's budgets as a result of the fact that our income taxes are going to decline. I'm going to have another update on those numbers within 2 weeks when we have our May collection totals. But given the situation, and looking also at the number of runs that have occurred this year, the number of times the firefighters have been called out has declined by 14%. So it's really worrisome that our call-offs have grown, our run numbers are down, and our overtime has completely exhausted the budget that was put in place by council. So unfortunately, this is the decision that the administration is going to have to make, and we're going to make it knowing that it's going to have an impact, but we felt that by providing you with all of the data, you at least understood why we are in this situation and how we have to address it.
Thanks, Kyle. Can the numbers that you just sort of generically talked about from a budget perspective be part of your presentation at our quarterly budget review that we're trying to get on the books for the next week?
Yes, I will provide you with that data. Correct. Yes.
Okay. And then at that time, if anybody wants to, we could take up the discussion of this if needed at that time.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by what needed at what time. Discussion of what are we actually discussing, other than me identifying where the overtime and how those are being impacted in other departments and where we are making cuts so that we can try to do our best to balance the budget by year end.
Yeah, if people have specific questions, we could address them at that time. Because I don't think this wasn't originally on our agenda that was published publicly. So I appreciate the presentation, but I don't know how in depth we can get into discussion around it if people have questions. I do see Samantha's hand up.
Yes, through the chair. So just to my understanding, Cal, this isn't, is this up for discussion? This is a decision based off of your analysis that you've done. This is what the administration is taking the action to brown out fire stations in order to protect the budget. That's what you're telling us. You're just passing this information along to us, and the administration is making this decision to move forward, correct?
That is correct. We wanted to make sure that you had all of the data so you could understand why we were making this decision, so that it supports our stance of we have completely exhausted the budget and it's only May. Well, we just finished May. And unfortunately, if we're going to work at closing the gap by year end with the fact that we're going to see a revenue decline, we need to, in essence, start looking at all the areas that we're going to potentially be spending in excess of the budget and start making decisions to curtail or to make changes so that we do our best to live within our means.
And do you know when the browning out of stations would begin, or is that a question for Chief?
I think that is probably the plan. The plan part perhaps might be something that the safety committee wants to take up with the chief. I'll let him speak if he wants to now.
After this meeting, I was actually going to probably start on Wednesday, because like as Kyle stated, I'm over my overtime budget, and if you remember, you came down on me pretty hard at the beginning of the year when I even asked for 50,000 more to make 110, and these guys in 5 months they've exhausted it, and the city doesn't have the money to and I surely can't take any more out of the budget I already have. This is just something I got to do, and the sooner that we do it, the better, to save money. And just so you guys know, this is not unusual for fire departments. I mean, this is not unusual for fire departments to do at all. Every fire department in the country browns out fire stations for reasons such as this. This is not new to the fire service at all.
And I just have one more question. It's
Go ahead, Samantha.
Through the chair, Chief, and of the 5 firefighters that were impacted due to COVID, are they all back on the job?
Yes, they all came back. For the fire department, COVID existed from March 25th to roughly April 18th. By April 18th, all the firefighters were back. However, I still quarantine Station 1 for the next, I think, until the first week of May. I want to ensure that nobody else downtown was going to come down with the virus. So I still quarantine Station 1, and the people that were affected, that $26,000 that Kyle was talking about, it came from Station 1. Because when COVID started, I quarantined the station. So that meant that nobody that did not work at Station 1 was allowed to work at Station 1. And at the time, I had Engine 7, Ladder 22, and Engine 12, because Station 12 was getting the floor done. So I had 3 trucks and a battalion chief downtown, and I wouldn't allow anybody else to come and work downtown. So even if we had enough people in the city to work that day, if we needed one overtime for downtown or for a downtown truck, I wouldn't allow anybody from the outside to come in. So overtime had to be generated. Overtime had to be generated because the chiefs could only get someone that works downtown on one of those trucks on another turn to come in to work. So that's where that $26,000 came in, because I completely quarantined the station.
Okay, thank you. And direct follow-up for Cal. So due to COVID, we were looking at a possible, a $26,000 increase in what we already had laid out. But now we are on our way to exceeding that, which is why we're where we are now. That's what you're telling us.
Let me make sure. I'm pointing out that, yes, as a result of the COVID, it did help to escalate us reaching that budget target sooner. We might have, if that had not occurred, based on the activity that we have in front of us, we might have hit the target of our budget threshold by June. So we would have found ourselves maybe addressing this a month out. But as a result of COVID-19, it sped up the process. And by the end of May, we have totally used our budget. And like I said, the graphic is trying to point out that we should have found ourselves where the budget that you had passed was adequate enough. When you look at what we had gone through the first 5 months of last year, we had enough to accommodate more than what was needed. So if you had added in COVID-19 and we had used what we had incurred last year, we'd only be at about 10,000 plus 26. We'd be at 36,000 of the 110. But unfortunately, when you look at January, February, March, and May, those amounts are roughly what we just spent for that 1 month or that one window for COVID-19. We were spending that in March. We spent that in May. So unfortunately, as a result of these call-offs, and in addition, COVID-19, we have no budget left over for non-holiday overtime.
And direct follow-up. This question is for the mayor. Is he still on? Is the mayor still on?
I am.
Oh, perfect.
I am.
So my question is, upon speaking with the chief and reviewing this information, you know, you've made the decision to brown out the fire stations. Do we have any other options, or did you look at any other options, or do you feel as the mayor of the city that this is the only way for us to go?
Well, we look at the first option is least restricted, and that's just to stay within your budget, and that has not happened. Right now, I'll be honest with you, we don't have any other options. There's no other funds other than the dollars like any other department. When those monies are gone, then you have to take with responsibility in that department. So these are the options. And I take the chief's recommendation, and that's just our issue we need to deal with.
Hey, Harry, sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna ask you to mute yourself. You keep popping up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Kyle, do we anticipate any state or federal COVID-19 reimbursement money to come through that could be used for salaries and departments that were affected in situations like this?
There has been a lot of discussion at the federal level that there could be support coming to states. We are hopeful. I know Mayor Brown is in constant contact through the governor's office, as all of the mayors of the large cities in Ohio are looking for assistance, because we are all, in essence, faced with this adversity of declining income tax or however type of revenues that any community would be using, and an increased expense as a result of addressing COVID-19. Unfortunately, right now, there is nothing concrete that we can rely on. It will be fantastic if there is an infusion before the end of the calendar year, but we can't hope that there is and then not address it. That's why the chief, the mayor, and myself, along with the rest of his administration, Nikki and Attorney Limbian, have sat down, and we have to address this head on. And unfortunately, if there is a lifeline at the end of it, that'll be wonderful, because then we'll be able to put these resources back into the budget and hopefully solve our problem. But if we count on it before we are even promised those funds, and those funds aren't delivered, we are going to find ourselves in a deeper financial hole. So that is why the administration is taking this approach that we're going to address it head on right now. And if there is some additional funding down the road, that'll be helpful in us closing the budget gap.
Samantha.
Yeah, so just a question, Cal. So the city did receive some COVID dollars. Are those dollars restricted? And could you speak to that, please?
Yes, the city has received money that is going to be utilized through HUD. So those monies are going to be dispensed through council with direction through Nikki under the HUD guidelines. If those guidelines are allowed to be used to funnel money back into safety services, we will do our best to make sure that that happens. But it's my understanding that that was not the initial guidelines of how those funds can be used, and that is why we are taking these steps. If those guidelines are updated and changed, that those monies can be used for those services, we will immediately restore those funds and make sure that the department is able to operate. But as the chief said, this is happening. This happens all the time. And the only way to address it so that we, in essence, bring a halt to these call-offs, because it's alarming that within 5 months of this year compared to last year, we're up over 78%. We don't have the reason why, other than the numbers speak for themselves. And we're hopeful that this trend changes going forward.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. That is everything on my agenda. Anita unfortunately had to, she lost connection here, so Basha, you and I will have to make our motions for the items on our agenda today. You good with that?
Yes, one bit of clarification on number 7, were we proceeding forward or was that going to the Public Utilities Committee?
No, I think we were proceeding forward, just the possibility of having another Public Works Committee meeting in order to discuss where Chuck could present his plan for the way he goes about systemically checking sewers and things.
Okay, and same with number 17, we're going to present it forward, correct? But in hopes that we would have more information on Wednesday, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm fine. I'm comfortable moving it forward without, at this point, and I'm sure they can get it to us by Wednesday. If
Okay.
not, we can deal with it then.
Through
Okay.
the chair.
Samantha?
Through the chair. So those two ordinances were moving forward, pending that Chuck would provide the information that myself and Anita asked for Wednesday.
Chuck, are you clear on what Samantha wants on item number 7? I just want to make sure that you're clear, Chuck.
Yes, I am clear.
Okay. Okay, Basha, so everything's moving forward right now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I would like to make a motion to forward ordinances 1 through 4, 6 through 17 to the council floor for consideration of passage.
Second.
And I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All right, we are adjourned here at 6:21. Rick, you can take over and end our meeting. Thanks, everyone.